ESPN.com senior NFL insider Casey Joyner is here to break it all down. As somehow, someway, the Eagles get to a victory. Casey, a lot to break down in this one. Most important part of that game yesterday, hey, Josh Adams, welcome aboard. 22 carries, 84 yards. Is that the difference in that game?
Article for ESPN's fantasy section takes a look at the blocking from week 12 and how that impacts fantasy football, and I looked at Adams as part of that analysis. And Adams this year has a 9.3 yard average in a metric I have called good blocking yards per attempt. Measures how productive you are when you get good blocking. That's well above the 7.8 league average, and none of the other Eagles running backs have even met the league average in that category. So he's given them a breakaway ability that they haven't had all year.
Yeah, offensive line, though, how much of a factor they play? Is this more Josh Adams just being a nice back, or did the line, we always hear, they like to run block. This is what they want to do.
It is part of it. Their good blocking rate actually yesterday was lower than it's been of late. They didn't do quite as well in that category. So it's more that when he gets an opportunity to get big gains, he gets it. In fact, he had a double-digit good blocking yards per attempt in every game sans one prior to yesterday. And I know it was on small sample sizes. He didn't have 10 carries in any of the previous games, but it was enough of a breakaway ability that none of the other backs had shown, because none of the other backs even come close to that category. So it's more a matter of, the blocking's good, but it's more a matter of what he's doing with the blocking.
And he had a nice run, 52 yards. It gets called back because of the hold. And then they didn't really go to him, but they ran that game out. They were able to kind of, get the clock rolling. They were able to force the Giants to call timeouts, and the Giants but the fact that they were run, what did that do for Carson Wentz?
It does a lot for Wentz, because if you can't get big gains, that was a big part of what it was in past years. Last year was that Ajayi was able to break off those big runs later in games. And if you don't have that kind of breakaway ability, if the other team knows that even if you get a block, if we're going to hold you to 6 or 7 yards per carry, if they know that that's the case, you're not going to be able to go over the top, because the safeties are never going to have to come up. If they know, hey, look, your backs are plotting, and then we don't have to worry about anything of their breakaway ability, they're just not going to do that. When you've got a guy like Adams, you have to come up and make those tackles, because if you don't, he's going to start breaking off 15 and 20-yard runs, and that's what scares defense.
Casey Joyner with us here. They can't get Tate involved. It's seemingly like, they're trying. Yesterday they gave him, how many targets did he have yesterday? I know he had more so yesterday, it seemed like, than before, but why are they struggling to get this guy involved?
I think they're struggling to get him involved because Detroit had very good ideas as to what to do with him. They knew we want to use him on screen passes. They knew there were certain types of concepts that you want to include him in, and I just don't think that that's where the kind of things they were able to do with him. They only threw, in fact, Wentz only threw 5 vertical passes yesterday, the whole game, which is an incredibly low number, and 2 of them went to Tate. And as much as I like what Tate does, is he your primary vertical threat? Is he the guy you want to be throwing 40% of your vertical passes to? I just don't think that's what the case is. So they just haven't figured out. They need to be using them on screen passes, tunnel screens, smoke screens, things of that nature, basically extending your running game to the outside. That's the bulk of what he does. It's almost half of his value. And if you're not going to use him that way, then you're not getting the most out of him.
Well, and then conversely, they can't get Aguilar going either. He had only the one catch. It was a big catch yesterday, but he was such a big part of their offense last year.
He was, and they haven't figured out. It's amazing that, as you said, he only had one target, one reception for 12 yards. It's incredible that Aguilar hasn't been able to do that. But that's where I look at the offense and go, it's like they haven't figured. You would have thought when Tate got here, it's okay. Now they're slotted where they're supposed to be. Now they've got Jeffrey as the overall threat. Now they've got Tate as a guy who can be on the outside, but he'll give you some running threat on the outside. You can move Aguilar to the inside, and it's like they haven't figured that out. I think that I don't know that they're hesitant to say we want to slot the receivers in a particular way, because when you look at their skill sets, they're just not being utilized the way their skill sets say they should.
Casey, the game Wentz had yesterday, I don't know that it was his best game. Made a couple of big throws, but what did you think of Carson Wentz in the game yesterday?
18 of 23 on short passes, but gaining 8.7 yards per attempt when he throws short passes. If you can gain 8.7 yards per attempt on short passes, that might explain why you don't throw 5 vertical passes, because you're getting that. 8.7 yards per attempt. If you did that overall, that's a really good number. If you get 9, you're in elite territory. 8.7 just on short passes, that's terrific. And Spread it around a lot. You gotta like the targets. I mean, 7 targets to Ertz, 6 targets to Tate, 3 targets to Jeffrey, 3 to Goddard, 2 to Clement, and 1 to Aguilar. I mean, another 1 to Adams that was incomplete. I mean, he's spreading the ball around on those short passes and such. So I think Philadelphia's just saying, I don't like not going vertical, but if you can get this type of short pass production, your passing game can still survive.
Well, they brought it up during the broadcast on Fox all day yesterday, Casey. You know, they don't really have a guy they think can run past you. I mentioned weeks ago that maybe they're missing Torrey Smith. Maybe not his production, but his presence.
Yeah, again, Torrey Smith earlier this year at one point had, when he was in Carolina, at one point they measure the speed that the receiver runs on a play, and he was still in the top 3 as far as the fastest route runner in the game this year. So he still had that speed. That's probably a big part of what they need in their offense. Even if they just had, you can go to anywhere, and you can even a guy like Christian Kirk down in Arizona. Nobody's heard of him, but one thing he does for their offense is he's able to tear the top off of defenses from a speed perspective. At least you have to respect the threat, and nobody on this offense right now is anybody you respect that way. But again, if you can't stretch to the top off a defense, and you can still hit 8.7 yards underneath, I think that says a lot for your offense.
So let me ask you, watching what you saw, now I know the Giants aren't very good, any bright spot or reason to feel that the offense has some sustainability moving forward? They didn't score a whole heck of a lot again, but do you feel like, I mean, the last time they played the Giants, 34, okay, they're moving in the right direction. That didn't happen. Anything that makes you feel like they should be able to keep it going these next 5?
If you've got a quarterback who is patient and will play the game on the short passes the way that they did yesterday, and again, we got to take the competition into account, but if you've got a quarterback who will dink and dunk and who is patient with that and doesn't feel like he has to throw his fastball like most quarterbacks, they get frustrated if they throw a bunch of dink and dunk passes. They decide they want to go vertical, and it ends up burning them. If you're willing to do that, you can live with this type of offense. Tom Brady's done that with the Patriots many times over the years. There's times when he has vertical threats and can tear the top off the defense. There's times when he doesn't. Like this year, he doesn't, and he's still having a solid. For him, it's a subpar year, but for most quarterbacks, it'd be a really good year. You can still do that if that's what you're willing to do on offense. So you add that to the breakaway threat that now have in the backfield. I'm feeling a lot better about the Eagles' offense than was a couple weeks ago.
Casey Joyner, let me get your take on the game plan of Shermer.
On the game plan of Shermer, again, I'd love to see more vertical passes, but I think he finally realizes that I don't have the vertical receivers to tear the top off the defense, and that may be why he's not slotting his players a particular way. I'm looking at that in the Eagles side. When we talk about Shermer's offense, though, Eli's 7 of 14 on vertical passes, 11.9 yards per attempt. But most of his vertical passes are going to Beckham. He's only throwing 4 vertical passes. He's throwing 4 vertical passes to Red Ellison, 1 to Shepard, 1 to Fowler. When you've got that type of receiving core for the Giants, I just don't know if that's you're going to be able to hit the vertical passes the way you want to.
Casey, they don't go to Barkley at all. I mean, the third quarter there and his explanation. If they run Barkley more, I mean, is that a different game?
Part of the reason they didn't run Barkley is their good blocking rate wasn't that good yesterday. The Giants did not have the Giants were not even nowhere near as good as they should have been. They'd been in past games. Going into that game yesterday, they had for the previous 3 games, they'd had a good blocking rate of 45% or higher. 45 is about the league average. Yesterday, they only had a good blocking rate of 40%, and they had the one big run, but they weren't gaining many yards outside of that big run. It's the problem for the Eagles is they were able to shut the run down for the most part, but they still gave up 13.6 yards per attempt on good blocking plays. That's just atrocious. That says something bad about the Eagles, but I think the Giants were thinking we can't get consistent run blocking up front. We can hit the big gains when we do, but we can't get some consistent blocking, so we'd rather give it to Eli and go after the secondary. I think that was kind of a mistake for them because you got to still go with your best player. I mean, the Eagles secondary is in terrible shape, but you still have to be handing it off to your best player. When you take him out of the game plan willing it, that's a bad sign.
How about after the game, Beckham says, I thought with their banged-up secondary, we would have gone after them more, but that wasn't in the game plan. If you look at Cravon LeBlanc, I can't even think of the guys, Sullivan, Bosby. Do they have to throw more, or is it because Shermer knows he's limited at quarterback?
If you've got the kind of secondary that the Eagles have, and again, I mentioned they were throwing all those passes to Red Ellis, and that's not who you want to be throwing to, but when you've got that many that many issues in the secondary, that many coverage issues in the secondary. I don't understand why. If Eli yesterday's 19 of 23 on short passes. Okay, short passes 10 yards or fewer downfield. So when you're throwing the dink and dunk stuff, 19 of 23, only 5.7 yards per attempt. So the problem for them is, whereas Carson Wentz is 18 of 23 for 8.7 yards per attempt, Eli is 19 of 23 for 5.7 yards per attempt. They're not getting it done on the short passes yesterday. They needed to go vertical more often, is what I think.
Their problem going vertical, though, although their line in the first half held up. It was the second half I thought the Eagles' pass rush caused a little bit of problems.
It did, but when you can still throw timing routes and such against the secondary. I mean, six vertical targets to Odell Beckham. Okay, it's about 1.5 per quarter. Against this secondary, why aren't you throwing 10 or 12 vertical routes to Beckham? I don't care which one. It doesn't matter. Pick a player. I'll go throw fade routes to him all day long versus trying to go throwing 4 vertical passes to Red Ellison. I don't get that. They should have been, you should be throwing 20 vertical targets. Go max protect and only go a couple of receivers downfield if you have to. But when there's nobody in that Eagles secondary that could cover Beckham, and I think Shepard is a good matchup against any of those Eagles corners too. So
that Shepard had a big drop too.
Yeah, he did, and only 1 or 2 on vertical passes, 18 yards. So they didn't produce when they should have. But I don't see why you're throwing 14 vertical passes and 23 short passes. I almost would like to flip that. I don't even want to throw 23 vertical passes, but I would like to see closer to 20 vertical passes against the secondary.
I'm just not sure. I feel that the Eagles' offense is ready to kind of be more consistent defensively. They should get some help back. I thought Schwartz did a good job. Some people say it was Jenkins saying, "Hey, Jim, you got to simplify things for these guys. They're too much information overload." I thought Jenkins was a madman out there. They had him moving all over the place, and I thought the Eagles' defense really was the story of the second half. Really simplifying things and utilizing the talent of Jenkins, and that interception right at the end of the half maybe turned the game around.
It did, and if you're looking at their production by quarter too, if you're looking at the vertical production in the third and fourth quarter for Eli. Third and fourth quarter for Eli, again, I mentioned that he was at 11.7 yards per attempt, 2 of 6 on vertical passes in the second half for only 48 yards, 8 yards per attempt. It's just terrible. And Beckham in the second half, only 3 vertical targets, 1 reception for 19 yards. That may also be that Beckham said, we had him in the first half. Why don't we keep going after these guys instead we start scaling things back? And it's scary. Wentz only was 0 for 2 in the second half too, but when they were getting it done on short passes, that's what allowed the Eagles offense to keep moving. The Giants offense, once the vertical game went away, I think their offense just shut down.
All right, let's look at the matchups, week number 12, and see how it all shakes out as we move into Monday Night Football. We'll get Casey's thought on the game in just a bit. Let's go back to Thanksgiving. Bears beat the Lions without Trubisky. You got to feel that the Bears 8-3. This team looks like they're for real.
Yeah, I've got them at number 6 in my power rankings for this week, and their offense, their defense is playing lights out. It's amazing their offense is doing as well as it is when Jordan Howard is as terribly productive as he is. I think they need to be giving Cohen more carries for that. So that team could be even better down the stretch when they can get the running game going.
Dallas beats Washington. We know that Washington is banged up. What did we learn from that game about the NFC East?
I think we learned that Dallas has a formula now that they can win games with defense and with their running game, and they still and their passing game obviously with what we learned out of Cooper and things. If they can get him going to any extent to the level that they did on Thanksgiving, it makes their offense that much more dangerous. So I think Dallas is now a 2 formula team versus a 1 formula team.
They got Cooper. Obviously, he's been way more involved than Tate's been.
Yeah, he's more vertical receiver, though. I mean, he can't be an all-around
Well, people were kind of critical of Dallas, saying, oh, you gave up a first for Cooper. Philly only gives up a third to get Tate. People thought Tate was the better move, and Cooper's been much more impactful.
If you can get Tate to produce like he did in Detroit, you might have a case that Tate's as good a receiver. But if you can get somebody to tear the top off a defense, I'd rather have a vertical receiver who I know can beat the defenses. If he can do that type of vertical production all the time, yeah, then it was a good deal for Dallas. If he can do that. But again, can he continue to do that? Because in Oakland, he would do it for 1 game and then take 3 games off.
Saints beat the Falcons. Falcons fall to 4-7. What happened to Atlanta?
Offensive line is nowhere near as good as it was last year, nowhere near as consistent, and they can get into shootouts and things, but that's not what they really need to do. They need to be able to protect that defense, and they can't run the ball as effective this year as they did last year, and it's really changed the kind of games that they get into.
Bills beat the Jags. What's happened to Jacksonville? They fired their offensive coordinator. They benched their quarterback. This was a team that was in the AFC Championship game last year.
One of my ESPN cohorts, Mike Sando, posted something on Twitter today, said that the Jaguars, when you look at Bortles' production, is basically the same this year to last year, but when you look at their defensive production and their special teams production, it's dropped off dramatically. Their offensive line play, by the way, their offensive issues aren't Bortles. Their offensive line is one of the worst in the league. Over the course of the whole season, and the numbers have trended downward over the past 5 weeks, so that's their big problem is they don't have anything in the offensive line, and they need to realize that we need offensive linemen, and we need to have, more than we need a power running back and some things of that nature. If they get a great offensive line, Bortles could be a much better quarterback than he is.
Browns win on the road. They're 4-6. I mean, they've had some winnable games earlier. This team seemingly turned it around, and you look at 35 points on the board. Bengals defense is a mess. That we know, but it looks like the Browns are starting to turn some things around out there.
The Bengals may end up finishing, or Browns may finish up ahead of the Bengals by the end of the season because the Bengals just put Andy Dalton on IR, so they're going to play Driscoll the rest of the year. The Browns, their problem this year, I hate to say that, is you can respect him in a lot of ways, but Hugh Jackson's he's a terrible coach. He's a terrible head coach, and their team did play well below their talent level, and then you get a coach out there that gets them to play closer to their talent level. I don't think they were the playoff contender that some people thought they were, but they're still, on the very outside looking in, if they ran 4 or 5 wins in a row, they have a shot at the playoffs. So I think it's a matter that coaching kept that team back.
Patriots beat the Jets. Patriots are now the 2 seed. I mean, it seems like, Gronk hasn't really made a big impact. Gordon hasn't been as big as maybe you thought he might be by this time, but somehow, some way, they're the 2 seed in the AFC.
The Patriots find ways to not beat themselves. They're the best team in the league at making sure that they don't beat them. You can beat them if you play a good enough game, but they won't beat themselves. They're a very beatable team, though. They've got a couple tough games down the stretch. I think that if other teams play to their talent level, they could beat them. But again, the Patriots are going to make sure they don't beat themselves. It's a testament to good coaching. And by the way, great offensive line coaching, too. Their offensive line's played really well of late, and it's allowed their offense to survive those issues where they're not getting a downfield production.
Big game for Winston. They got a tough decision on their hand, Tampa.
They do. He is what he is. He's going to be a vertical quarterback. He's going to throw a lot of interceptions, and you're going to have to build a team around that. If you're trying to build any other type of offense with him, it's not going to work. So they need to make a decision as to, is that type of offense the type we want to run, and do we try and get into those sorts of games, or do we try and build a different type of team? I think it's a matter of where they want to be as a club and what kind of approach they want to use to decide if they want to keep him.
Yeah, they blow out San Francisco 27-9. Seahawks, I mean, even when they're really good, they don't travel very well. To go across the country and beat a Panthers team, what has happened to the Panthers? And is Seattle a legit playoff contender?
The Carolina Panthers defense hasn't played as well of late. Their front seven is grading out in the bottom half of the league in my recent rankings, so I think that's part of their problem. The Seahawks, I give them massive credit. Coming to the season, they have what looks like it should be the worst offensive line in the league. Their metrics are terrible. Even early in the year, the metrics are terrible, and they keep at the running game. They keep at the running game. And keep at the running game. They don't give up on it. They're now in the upper half of the league in run metrics over the past few weeks, and they've had some really good performances. So they're finally developed into an offensive line that can road grade, and that's what they want to be, and it's working out for them.
They beat Carolina 30-27. Ravens, we got a quarterback controversy. They beat the Raiders 34-17.
There's no controversy. Lamar Jackson should be the quarterback. Lamar Jackson has done an exceptional job. Their run blocking has been very, very good of late. Gus Edwards has been a really big step up for them in their backfield. He's sort of like Josh Adams for them. He's been able to give them a breakaway threat that Alex Collins just did not give them all season long. Again, Collins is battling an ankle injury that's probably been bothering them for a few weeks. So they've got their ground game going, their defense is going, their special teams are going. I think they're going to be a team that sneaks into the playoffs and maybe gets a win.
All right, they beat Oakland yesterday. Raiders season, of course, has been just brutal. Chargers all over the Cardinals. They come back off that bad loss last week. So what do we like about the Chargers at 8-3?
The Chargers, with Joey Bosa for one. Joey Bosa goes in there. Now he's back, and he's having a huge impact as expected. A problem for the Chargers is Gordon has what looks like an MCL injury is what's being reported, and he might miss next week. We've got to play the Steelers, and we'll see now if the Chargers can get into that kind of a high-scoring game without him. Austin Eckler is back up, and he's a very good back, but I don't know that he's going to be quite as good. So we'll see if that offense, if he is out, we'll see if it's going to be quite as impactful as it's been.
Bad loss by the Steelers. Broncos have won 2 straight. They beat L.A. and they beat Pittsburgh. So we got to start looking at the Broncos as a playoff contender.
The Broncos, when I looked at the run blocking and pass blocking matchups, they graded up very well because the Steelers' run blocking has been atrocious. I wrote about that in that ESPN Plus article I mentioned earlier, that their run blocking has been atrocious. Connor hasn't been nearly as productive. That's why the Steelers yesterday, they knew they had a mismatch in run blocking. They knew they couldn't win the point of attack battles. So that's why they had Roethlisberger have 62 dropbacks versus 14 planned rush attempts. You can't keep winning in the NFL if that's the case. Now, Denver's rush defense been really strong, but Pittsburgh's got some tough matchups down the stretch. They better find a way to get that running game going, or they're going to be. They'll probably still make the playoffs because their schedule has a couple of easy games, but they're going to be a team that should have been the 2 seed, and they might end up losing in the first round of playoffs and get a run blocking pick.
5 in a row for the Colts. Dolphins hung in there, good game. Dolphins fall to 5-6. People have kind of forgot about them, but they're kind of in that mix. But the Colts at 6-5, 5 in a row. Are they a playoff team?
Colts are the real deal. Andrew Luck has been, I think that the sackless game streak ended yesterday, if I remember correctly. I think they did get a sack. I know one got turned over on penalty, but still, the pass block has been fantastic. The run block has been off the charts good. That team is controlling the line of scrimmage like nobody's business, and their defense is playing much better of late too. So that's a team I think the Colts are going to make the playoffs, and the Dolphins have been doing it with smoke and mirrors. I think that they're going to stumble down the stretch because they almost got the win yesterday, but that's who they are. They almost get the win, they almost get the loss. But the Colts are a team, and they play well. They're going to get some dominant wins.
Packers lose again, 4-6-1. Vikings go to 6-4-1. And I don't know. I said all along, the Packers are just an average team with Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers doesn't play like Aaron Rodgers, they're just not a very good team.
You can't take all of his receivers away too. Graham's not turned out to be much, and they don't have. They've got Adams, and that's it. The pass against of all this, Scantling's not very good. St. Brown running out of gas. They just don't have the other threats, and they finally put Jones in their backfield, but they're not even really committed to him, and they've got some of the least creative play calling in the league. I think McCarthy finally going to. I think this season is going to cost McCarthy his job because you can't expect Aaron Rodgers to always fix the problems, but they've got some bigger issues to fix besides. They shouldn't be relying on Aaron Rodgers to fix all the problems. They need to have a coach who can do it, and McCarthy's not that guy.
All right, and then tonight, Tennessee, Houston, good game. South still up for grabs, but Tennessee needs this one if they want to think about the division.
They do. In Houston, they should be fired up to play for their recently deceased owner, Bob McNair. He passed away a few days ago, so I think they've got the emotional edge there. Plus, they've got so much big play talent. In Tennessee, they can play a certain formula of the game, but you look at their offense and you go, if anybody can keep up with Hopkins or anybody can keep up with Watson, if those two play to their talent level, not really. So I think that if you play this game 10 times, Houston wins at 7.
There you go. Week number 12, almost in the books. Crazy. 12 weeks in. We're looking at things. By the way, Chiefs and Rams, they had the bye this week. And then we know next week, the Thursday night game, a real good one. We will break that one down on Friday when Casey's back with us right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And Monday, we will be getting you ready for the Eagles and the Redskins, which now means a whole heck of a lot. So, another good week in the NFL. The playoffs, I don't know, can you pick 6 right now? You think you could get 12? Can you nail that down?
If I had to pick, the top of the power rankings wasn't that difficult. Obviously, you're picking the Saints, the Rams, and the Chiefs as the top 3. I still got the Steelers in the top 8. Still got the Patriots up there. You still have some really good teams in the league, but once you get outside that top 5 or 6, the consistency level drops off. Even the Chargers, again, you talk about their bad loss last week, they're still a top 10 team, but you get outside of those 5, 6, 7 teams, and it's very up in the air.
All right, man. We got a lot of great races down the stretch. We'll be breaking it all down right here with Casey Joyner, ESPN.com senior NFL insider, right here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, pal.
Appreciate it, man.